I'd just taken her tea up this morning when she said, "Graham, I think the world of you." I said, "I think the world of you." And she said, "That's all right then." I said, "What's brought this on?" She said, "Nothing. This tea looks strong. Pull the curtains." Of course I knew what had brought it on. She said, "I wouldn't like you to think you're not number one." So I said, "Well, you're number one with me too. Give me your teeth, I'll swill 'em." What it was, we'd had a spot of excitement yesterday. We'd ran into a bit of Mother's past. I said, "I didn't know you had a past. I thought I was your past." She said, "You?" I said, "Well, we go back a long way." "How does he fit in vis-a-vis Dad?" She laughed. "Oh, he was pre-Dad." I said, "Pre-Dad? I'm surprised you remember him. You don't remember to switch your blanket off." She said, "That's different. His name's Turnbull." I said, "I know," he said. I'd parked by the War Memorial on a usual seat while I went and got some reading matter. Then I waited while she went and spent a penny in the disabled toilet. She's not actually disabled, her memory's bad. But she says she prefers their toilets because you get more elbow room. She always takes forever, diddling her hands and whatnot. And when she eventually comes back, it turns out she's been chatting to the attendant. I said, "What about?" She said, "Hanging." She was in favour of stiffer penalties for minor offences, and I thought, well, we know better, Graham and me. I wish you could have been there, love. You could have given her the statistics. Where are we going for our tea? The thing about Mam is, though she's never had a proper education, she's picked up enough from me to be able to hold her own in discussions about up-to-the-minute issues like the environment and the colour problem. For a woman of her age and background, she has a very liberal slant. She'll look at my Guardian and she actually thinks for herself. Dr. Chowdhury said to me, "Full marks, Graham. The best way to avoid a broken hip is to have a flexible mind. Keep up the good work." They go mad round the War Memorial, so when we cross over, I'll generally slip my arm through hers until we're safely across, only once we're on the pavement, she'll postpone letting it go, because once upon a time we got stopped by one of these questionnaire women who reckons to take us for husband and wife. I mean, Mum's got white hair. She's doing this dodge, and I said, "Mum, let go of my arm." Well, I didn't really wrench it on. The next thing I know, she's flat on the pavement. I said, "Oh my God, Mother." People gather round, and I pick up her bag, and she sits up and says, "I've laddered both my stockings." I said, "Never mind your stockings, what about your pelvis?" She says, "It's these bifocals that tell you not to look down. I was avoiding some sick." Somebody says, "That's a familiar voice." And there's a little fellow bending over her, green trilby hat, shorty raincoat. "Hello," he says, "remember me?" Well, she doesn't remember people. I know for a fact because she swore me down she'd never met Joy Buckle, who teaches flowers in felt and fabric at my day centre. I said, "You have met Joy, you knitted her a tea cosy." That's all she can knit. Tea cosies. And bed socks both, outmoded articles. I said to her, "Branch out. If you can knit tea cosies, you can knit skiing hats." She says, "Well, I will." Only I have to stand over her, or I shall still leave a hole for the spout. Anyway, I said, "You do remember Joy because you said she had some shocking eyebrows." And she says, "Well, I don't remember." And that's the way she is. She doesn't remember. And here's this little fellow saying, "Do you remember me?" So I say, "No, she won't. Come along, Mother, let's get you up." Only she says, "Remember you? Of course, it's Frank Turnbull. It must be 50 years. He says, 53, Filey, 1938. She says, Seacrest. He says, no sand in the bedrooms. And they both cracked out laughing. Meanwhile, she's still stuck on the cold pavement. I say, "Come along, Mother, we don't want piles." Only he butts in again. He says, "With respect, it's advisable not to move a person until it's been ascertained that no bones are broken. I was in the St. John's Ambulance Brigade." "Yes," says Mother. "And who did you learn your bandaging on?" And they both burst out laughing again. He had on these bright yellow gloves, could have been a bookie. Eventually, I put my arms round her waist and hoist her up, only his lordship's no help as he claims to have a bad back. When she's finally restored to the perpendicular, she introduces him. "This is Frank Turnbull," she says. "He's a friend from the old days." What old days? First time I knew there were any old days. Turns out he's a gents outfitter, semi-retired. Shop in Bradford and some sort of outlet in Morecambe. I thought, well, that accounts for the yellow gloves. Straight off he takes charge. "What you need now, Vera, is a cup of coffee." I said we were just going for our tea. Weren't we, Mother? Vera? Her name's not Vera. She's never been called Vera. My dad never called her Vera. Except just the once when they wheeled him into theatre. Vera. Right, he says. Follow me. And he puts his arm through hers. Careful, she says. You'll make my boyfriend jealous. I didn't say anything. Now, the cafe we generally patronise is just that bit different. It's plain, but it's classy. No cloths on the table, the menu comes on a little slate, and the waitresses wear their own clothes and look as if they're doing it just for the fun of it. The stuff's all homemade, and we're both big fans of the date and walnut bread. This is the place, I said. Mr. Turnbull goes straight past. No, he says, I know, somewhere just opened. Press on. Now, if there's one thing Mother and me are agreed on, it's that red is a common colour, and the whole place is done out in red, lampshades red, waitresses in red, plates red, and on the tables those plastic sauce dispenser things cut up to look like tomatoes, also red. And when I look, there's a chip in the sugar. I thought Mother won't like this. Oh, she says, this looks cheerful, doesn't it, Graham? I said, there's a chip in the sugar. A detail, he says. They're still having their teething troubles. Is it 3 coffees? I say we like tea. Only Mother says, no, I fancy a change. I'll have coffee. He gets hold of the menu and he puts his hand on hers. Might I advise, he says, a cheeseburger. Oh, she says, what's that? He says it's fresh country beef, mingled with golden fried onion, topped off with toasted cheese, served with French fries and lemon wedge. Oh, lemon wedge. Oh, she says, that sounds nice. I thought, well, I hope you can keep it down because it'll be the pizza saga all over again. One mouthful and 4 o'clock in the morning I was still stuck at her bedside with the bucket. She says, I like new experiences in my eating. I had a pizza once, didn't I, Graham? I didn't say anything. They fetch the food and she's wiring in. He says, are you enjoying your cheeseburger? She says, I am. Would I be mistaken in thinking that receptacle contains tomato sauce? He says it is. She says, give us a squirt. And they both burst out laughing. Glass cups, Graham. Be careful or we'll see up your nose. More laughter. She says, Graham's quite refined. He often has a dry sherry. Well, he wants smartening up a bit, Mr. Turnbull says. Plastic Mac. He wants one of these quilted jobs. I've shifted a lot of those. I don't like those quilted jobs, I said. He sweats, Mother said. There's no excuse for that in this day and age, Mr. Turnbull said. The range of preparations on the market, you want to invest in some of that roll-on deodorant, everybody can hear. And flares are on Fanama, even in Bradford. Graham doesn't care about that, do you, Graham? Mother said. He reads a lot. So what? Mr. Turnbull said. I know several big readers who've still managed to be men about town. Lovett Green's a nice shade. I'll tell you this, Graham, he says. If I was squiring a young lady like this around town, I wouldn't do it in grey socks and sandals now. These shoes are Italian. Feel. I always think Graham would have made a good parson, Mother says, feeling his foot. Only he doesn't believe in God. That's no handicap these days, Mr. Turnbull says. What do you do? He's between jobs at present, aren't you, Graham? Mother said. He used to do soft toys for handicapped children. And then you were making paper flowers at one stage. I went to the toilet. When I came back, he said, I don't believe in this mental illness. No. 9 times out of 10 it's a case of pulling your socks up. I didn't say anything. Mother said, that's right. I think the pendulum's gone too far. She didn't look at me. It's like these girls not eating, he said. They'd eat if they'd been brought up like us, Vera. Nothing to eat. That's right, she said. Did you marry? Twice, he said. I buried Amy last May. I was heartbroken, but life goes on. I've a son in Stevenage. I've got 2 grandsons, one at the motorbike stage. Do you drive? No, I said. You do, Mother said. You had that scooter. It was only a moped. Well, a moped then, Graham. They're all the same. Do you know, I can't get him to blow his own trumpet. I've got a Rover 2000, he said. Handles like a dream. The solution to this mental illness is hard physical work. Making raffia mats, I'd go mad. Mother said, that's right. Only they do pottery now as well. I've seen some nice ashtrays. Pff, feather bedding, Mr. Turnbull said. Do you like these Pakistanis? Well, in moderation, Mother said. We have a nice newsagent. Graham thinks we're all the same. I said, I thought you did. Well, I do, Graham, when you explain it all to me. Only, and then I forget the explanation and I'm back to square one. There is no explanation, Mr. Turnbull said. They sell mangoes in our post office. What explanation is there for that? I know, Mother said. I've smelled curry on my women's own. You have to be educated to understand. I didn't say anything. He ran us home. Promised to give her a tinkle next time he was in the neighbourhood. Said he was often round here tracking down two-tone cardigans. Your mother's a grand woman, he said. You want to cherish her. He does, Mother said. You're my boyfriend, aren't you, Graham? She put her arm through mine. There must be a famine on somewhere, because we were just letting our midday meal go down when the vicar comes round with some envelopes. Breezes in, anorak and running shoes on. He says, I always look forward coming to this house, Mrs. Whittaker. He's got this idea she's deaf, which she isn't. It's one of the few things she's not. He says, and do you know why? It's because you two remind me of Jesus and his mother. Well, I've always thought that Jesus was quite offhand with his mother. I remember on one occasion he got quite snotty with her, but I didn't say anything. And of course Madam is over the moon. In her book, if you can't get compared with the Queen Mother, then the Virgin Mary's the next best thing. She says, are you married? She asks him every time. She never remembers. He says, no, Mrs. Whittaker, I am married to God. She says, where does that leave you with the housework? He says, I don't do as well as your Graham. He's got this place like a palace. She says, I do my whack. I washed 4 pairs of stockings this morning. She hadn't. She'd put them in the mould and then they'd slipped her mind, so the rest of the operation devolved on me. He says, how are you feeling, Mrs. Whittaker? She says, stiff down one side. I said she had a fall yesterday. I never did. I said, you did, Mother. You had a fall and then you ran into Mr. Turnbull. Oh, she says, that's right. I did. And starts rooting in her bag for a lipstick. She says, that's one of them anoraki things, isn't it? They've gone out now, those. If you want to be a man about town, you want to invest in one of them continental quilts. Oh, he says. I said she means quilted jackets. He knows what I mean. And where did you get them shoes? He said, these are training shoes. What are you training for? Are you not fully qualified? He said, if Jesus were alive today, Mrs. Whittaker, I think you'd find these are the type of shoes he would be wearing. Not if his mother had anything to do with it, she said. She'd have him down Stetton Simpson's, get him into some good brogues. Somebody was telling me the Italians make good shoes. The vicar takes this as his cue to start on about people who have no shoes at all, and via this, the famine in Ethiopia. I fork out 50p, which he says will feed 6 families for a week, and she says, well, it would have bought me some Quality Street. When he's at the door, he says, I take my hat off to you, Graham. I've a mother of my own. When I get back in, she says, Vicar, he look more like the paper boy. How can you look up to someone in pumps? Just then, there's a knock at the door. Get down, she says. He's back. Only it isn't. It's Mr. Turnbull. New outfit this time. Little suede coat, corduroy collar, maroon trousers. You're colourful, she says. We just happen to have these slacks on offer, he says. I wondered if you fancied a run out to Bolton Abbey. Oh, Bolton Abbey, she says. That's right, about a street, isn't it, Graham? Graham's good with old buildings, aren't you, Graham? He knows all the periods of houses. One's just come in, but people don't like it yet. But we do, don't we, Graham? I said, I don't know. She said, you do? What's it called? Victorian. That's right, Victorian. Only a lot are being pulled down now. Mr. Turnbull yawns. I've got a little bungalow, he said. Oh, that's nice. I like a bungalow, don't you, Graham? Yes, I said, providing it's not a blot on the landscape. He says, mine's architect designed. It's got a patio and a breakfast bar and it overlooks a beauty spot. "Oh," she says, "sounds tip-top. Well, we best be getting our skates on then, Graham." He says, "I've got to pick up a load of green three-quarter length wind cheaters in Ilkley, so there won't really be room for a third party. Isn't there anything on with the pictures?" Mother says, "Oh, he'll be happy reading." "Anyway," Mr. Turnbull said, "you don't always want to be with your mother at your age." I didn't say anything. I've been laid on my bed reading. I've a feeling there's somebody outside, only I can't see anybody. Once or twice I think I've heard a knock at the door, but I haven't gone, just in case there's nobody there. Today, they went over to York. It was after 7 when he dropped her off. He generally comes in, but not this time. Just gives her a little kiss. She has to bend down. I said, "Did you have a nice time?" She said, "Yes. We had egg and chips, tea, bread and butter. We've a lot in common, and there's a grand new car park." I said, "Didn't you go in the Minster?" She said, "No. Frank's not keen on old buildings. He says we've got to look to the future. He tells me there's a grand spanking new precinct in Bradford, so that's next on the agenda." "You're quiet." I said, "Do you wonder?" Dr. Chowdhury said I need a stable environment. This is hardly a stable environment with your fancy men popping in every 5 minutes. She says, "He is not my fancy man." I said, "Well, your fancy man in embryo." She said, "You know, I don't know what that means." I said, "How old are you?" She said, "I don't know." I said, "You do?" She said, "No, I don't. Tell me." "You're 72. "That's not so old. How old was Winston Churchill?" I said, "When?" "You think you've got something over me, Graham Whittaker? Well, I'll tell you something. My memory's better with Frank. He was telling me about the economy. You've got it all wrong." I said, "How?" "I can't remember, but you have. Blaming the government. Frank says it's the blacks." I didn't say anything. I just came upstairs. Well, when I came down, she still sat there with her hat and coat on. I said, "Do you want a bit of my tea, Cosy?" She said, "No. I don't think he's the tea cosy type. When I first met him, he had a motorbike and sidecar. Anyway, I think it's gone beyond the tea cosy stage." I said, "What do you mean?" She said, "Graham, my one aim in life is to make you happy. If I thought that by dying I could make you happy, I would." I said, "Mother, your dying wouldn't make me happy. Your dying would make me unhappy." "Anyway, Mother, you're not going to die." She said, "No, I'm not going to die. I'm going to get married, and the honeymoon's in Tenerife. Have one of your tablets." She made a cup of tea. I said, "How can you go to Tenerife? You were smothered at Scarborough." She said, "It's a 4-star hotel with tip-top air conditioning and you get your breakfast from a long table." I said, "What about your bowels?" She said, "What about my bowels?" I said, "Well, they were unpredictable at Morecambe. Get them to the Canary Islands and I'll be all over the place." She said, "Who's talking about the Canary Islands? I'm going to Tenerife." I said, "What about post-Tenerife? Where are you going to live?" She said, "Here. Frank says he'll be in and out away on business, but he wants to call this home." I said, "What about me?" She went to the kitchen. "Well, we wondered if you'd prefer going back to the hostel. You were happy at the hostel. You rubbed shoulders with all sorts." I said, "Mum, this is my home." She said, "A man shouldn't be living with his mother at your age, Frank says. Did you take a tablet?" Now it's 4 o'clock in the morning and I can't sleep. There's a car parked outside. I can't see, but I think there's somebody in it, watching, like they used to do before. I thought all that chapter was closed. Today, I went to community caring down at the health centre. They cater for all sorts. Steve, who runs it, says he's dead against what he calls the ghetto approach. Now, what he's after is a nice mix of personality difficulties as being the most fruitful exercise in problem solving and a more realistic model in society generally. There's constant coffee flowing, oiling the wheels, Steve calls it, and we're encouraged to ventilate our problems and let our head out generally. I sometimes feel a bit out of it because I've never had any major problems, so this time when Steve says, "Now then, chaps and chapesses, who wants to get the ball rolling?" I get in quick and tell them about Mother and Mr. Turnbull. When I've finished, he says, "Thank you, Graham, for sharing your problem with us. Does anybody want to kick it around?" First off the mark is Leonard, who wonders whether Graham has sufficiently appreciated that old people can fall in love and have meaningful relationships generally, like the young people. I suppose this is understandable coming from Leonard, who's 65. Only he doesn't have meaningful relationships, no. He's been had up for exposing himself in Sainsbury's doorway. As Mother said, Tesco, she could understand it. Then Janice chips in. Had they been having sexual intercourse? I said I didn't want to think about it. Steve said, why? I said I didn't know. So Steve said, maybe what we should be talking about is why Graham is being so defensive about sexual intercourse. I said, Steve, I am not being defensive about sexual intercourse. She is my mother. Jackie, who's 9 parts lesbian, says, Graham, she is also a woman. I couldn't believe this. I said, Jackie, you are an ex-battered wife. I thought you didn't approve of marriage. She says, Graham, I approve of a caring marriage. I said, Jackie, this is not a caring marriage. She said, what's Tenerife, Graham? That's caring. All I got was a black eye and a day trip to Fleetwood. Then they all have a go. Get Graham. The general feeling of the group is that Graham could be more open. I said, how can I be more open when there's somebody sat outside the house watching? I wanted to discuss that. Only Leonard leapt in and said he felt the need to talk through an episode of Behind British Home Stores. I stuck it out a bit longer, then came home. Mother sat there, all dolled up, earrings on, chiffon scarf, lathered in makeup. She said, oh, I thought you were Mr. Turnbull. I said, no. She said, I've just run to the lab. She goes 3 times in the next 10 minutes. I said, you're not getting married today, are you? She said, no. They've opened a new Asda superstore in Bingley. We thought we'd give it the once-over. Frank says they have a very good range of suntan lotions. I said, Mother, there's somebody watching the house. She says, I want to pick up some tissues and Frank's after a little chamois for his windscreen. He's promised me something called a cheeseburger. There's a little cafe that's part of the complex. Just then, there's a toot on the horn and she runs to the lab again. And I say, don't go. Don't leave me, man. She says, I'm not giving in to you. You're a grown man. Is my underskirt showing? He toots again. She says, look at your magazines. Make yourself a poached egg. I said, Ma'am. She said, there's that bit of chicken in the fridge. Oh, you could iron those 2 vests. Give us a kiss. Toodle pip. Have a tablet. I thought I'd come sit in the back room where they couldn't see me. I haven't moved, and once or twice I think there's a knock at the door. I sit in the dark, and there's another noise. Louder. I tell myself it isn't happening. I do like Dr. Chowdhury says. Only it is. Somebody shouts through the letterbox, I know you're in there. Open this door. So I do. And there is someone. It's a woman. Are you the son? She says. I said, what? She said, are you the son? I'm the daughter. I said, have you been watching this house? She said, on and off. Why? I said, nothing. She said, I don't know what there is to look so suited about. I said, you better come in. It's 9 o'clock when I hear the car outside. I'm sat watching TV. I say, oh, hello. Did you have a nice time? She said, yes. Yes, we did, thank you. I said, did you get your suntan lotion? She said, what suntan lotion? I said, you went to get suntan lotion. Never mind, you've forgotten. How's Mr. Turnbull? She says, Frank, he's all right. She takes her things off. You know, I think you could get to like him, Graham, if only you got to know him. I said, well, you should have brought him in. She said, well, next time I will. She said, it'd be nice if we could go off as a threesome. What have you done? I said, nothing. Just sat here. And you've been all right? I said, oh. You see, Graham? She said. There wasn't anybody outside. Oh, there was somebody outside. She said, oh, Graham, have you had a tablet? Have a tablet. I said, I don't want a tablet. And I will tell you who was sat outside. Mrs. Pamela Musgrave. She said, who's she? Nay, Turnbull, the daughter of your hubby-to-be. She says, oh, Graham, he hasn't got a daughter. He's got a son down south. He hasn't got a daughter. She says, oh, Graham, you're making this stuff up now. Have a tablet. I said, I'm not making it up. And I'll tell you something else I'm not making up as well. Mrs. Turnbull, She said, there is no Mrs. Turnbull, she's dead. I'm going to the lab. I said, she's not dead, she's sat in a wheelchair with a broken heart. He's been having you on. After a bit she comes out, you're just saying all this stuff. The numbers on the pad ring up. She's disabled as his wife, has been for 10 years. The daughter looks after them. You're not the first. He's always doing this. One woman, it was going to be Barbados. Somebody spotted you in Bolton Abbey, a well-wisher. Tenerife. Later on, I take her a tea upstairs. She's been crying. I bought this little bed jacket. I said, I'm sorry, man. She said he was right enough. What do you expect at my age? How old am I? 72. That's another thing, she says. I remembered with him. I don't remember with you. I said, I'm sorry, Mum. She said, you're not sorry. How can you be sorry? You didn't even like him. I said, he wasn't good enough for you. She said, I'm best judge at that. He was natty, more than can be said for you. I said, I understand. She said, you don't understand. How could you understand, you? You're not normal. I said, I'm going to bed. Later on, she comes shouting outside. You think you've got something over me, Graham Whittaker? Well, you haven't. I've got something over you. I said, go to bed. She says, I know the kind of magazines you read. I say, chess, you'll catch cold. She says, chess? Ha! They're never chess. Chess in the birthday suits. Chess with no clothes on. That kind of chess. Chess men. I say, go to bed and turn your blankets off. Next day, she's forgotten about it. Doesn't mention it anyway. Except just when we're leaving the house, she says, I do love you, Graham. I say, I love you too. She says, anyway, he had a hearing aid. So, what's on the agenda today? I said, I thought we could go to Ripon. She says, oh, Ripon, that sounds nice. We could go to the cathedral. We like old buildings, don't we, me and you? She put her arm through mine.